Good morning, Erie. You are listening to the Sonic Sunrise here on 90.5 WERG. It is now time for What's the Why, which is our new segment here on the Sonic Sunrise, where I interview faculty or staff from Gannon and ultimately ask them one question, which is, what is the why behind the work they do? This morning, I am joined by Keith Jones Pomeroy, who is the director of the Center for Social Concerns here at Gannon. Hi, Keith.
Hi, Maddie. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, Keith?
Yeah, so I am an Erie boomerang. So I grew up here in the county, and after graduating high school, I lived in Harrisburg for a while, lived in Thailand, working with a study abroad program for a couple years, and then lived in an intentional community in West Virginia, and then Virginia. And now back to Erie almost 20 years after leaving. So I've been here at Gannon about 3 years now.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to hearing more from you this morning.
Leonard. What is it?
Sonic Sunrise.
I made tea.
On 90.5 WERG.
I didn't make tea for you.
That was Foster the People with Sit Next to Me here on the Sonic Sunrise. I am joined by Keith Jones Pomeroy, who is the director of Gannon's Center for Social Concerns, and he is joining me this morning to talk about the Center for Social Concerns as well as ABSTs. Keith, as the director of Gannon's Center for Social Concerns, could you tell us a little more about what your department does on campus?
Yeah, thanks, Maddie. To start, I'd like to just share our mission, which I think is a really great mission. It's to equip students and campus colleagues to engage with Gannon's communities, both local and global, through purposeful service, exploration, and action for the common good. And I think that helps tie in that kind of why of what we do, and then how that's actually lived out. So the connecting with communities, we want our students to not just come to campus and they live in this Gannon bubble, but we want them to experience Erie as part of their larger community. So what does this neighborhood look like, and how are they involved in this neighborhood? But then also, how do they travel to other locations and connect with those communities as well? So that's kind of the overall purpose of what we do, and it kind of is lived out through our different programs. So the two kind of focal points of our our signature programs are our days of service. So we have Give Day in the fall. That's the third Saturday in September. We send out about 1,000 students into the local Erie community to do volunteer service with about 50 different community partners. So partners will say, hey, we need something cleaned up, or we need something painted, or we need something organized or built. Could we use some students? And then we send students there. We also send about 500 students in the spring to our Day of Caring in April. And so that's similar kind of model, about half the scale of Give Day, but same thing, going out into the Erie community, a lot of spring cleanup for partners. In those days of service, we just are able to get a kind of mass of students to do good work in the community. The second kind of signature program is, as you mentioned, ABST, which stands for Alternative Break Service Trips. These are week-long service trips that are student-led, that go over spring break and then the week after graduation in May. We also do volunteer placement, community partner management. So if a partner in the Erie community says, hey, I've got a volunteer project, can we use 5 students to help with a medical respite opportunity? They'll come to us, we'll post it, we'll kind of advertise it to different student groups, and then try to make that match. And then same thing, if a student says, hey, I have 10 hours of service I need to do this semester, we'll help them figure out where they can kind of connect in the community. And so we do a lot of that kind of matchmaking, but really we want students to be involved in the community, to find their values in the community, and to be able to do good work for everyone.
Wonderful. Gannon's really lucky to have the Center for Social Concerns. It plays a large role in not just our campus, but the Erie community, like you said. And I myself have participated in Give Day and Day of Caring, and they are a lot of fun. So students, make sure to sign up for those when the sign-ups come out.
The best rock on the radio on 90.5 WERG.
That was The Struts with Pretty Vicious here on the Sonic Sunrise, and we are back with What's the Why. I am joined by Keith Jones Pomeroy, who is the director for Gannon's Center for Social Concerns, and coming up in a little, I guess more than 2 weeks, Gannon's ABSTs are coming up. Can you give us a little more insight on what ABSTs are and how students could get involved in the future?
Absolutely. So ABSTs, alternative break service trips. We have 8 of those this year, so 5 over spring break, which is actually less than 2 weeks right now. I've been counting down the days. We also have 3 trips over in May, one of which we're both going on to Arizona with Navajo Nation. So these trips are student-led, which is also a really unique experience that students get to create the community with a group of 4 to 10 other students, as well as 2 faculty and staff, what are called accompaniers. So they're largely there as participants. They're not leading the trip. They're often the drivers. They're the purse. So they're the money bags. They are liability, and they're as a support for our student leaders. And then the participants just get to be there to experience, to engage, to serve. And all of these trips are rooted in 4 pillars. So service, simplicity, community, and reflection. And so the service is doing some sort of hands-on service that can look different in different trips. So some of it might be digging ditches or cleaning or painting, doing something with our partner that they need. A lot of it's capacity building. So an organization that's working with immigrants and trying to resettle them in the local community, they might not have the capacity to repaint the front entrance to their building, to their early learning center. And so our students coming in and being able to do that helps give them a wider sense of capacity, and then it also helps freshen up like a space, which is great. Simplicity is really about helping the group to get back to the basics of being present in the moment. So we encourage students to put the phones down, to let go of some of the screen time, and to really be present in the moment. They're only bringing a carry-on to most of these trips, so it's also like minimal packing, learning how to be a little bit more, again, minimalist in a lot of areas. The community is really built on having community with these experiences. So from mid-October till the trips leave, again, spring break or May, the groups are meeting bi-weekly to connect, to build relationships, to get to know each other, because the groups are going to be traveling. It's close space, so you're traveling in a plane, you're traveling in a van, you're sleeping often in kind of pretty tight quarters, and so knowing who you're going with is really helpful. So being able to have that space to build relationships, get to know each other, get to know motivations is really important. And then finally, reflection. That's really the soul of this experience. It's taking time each night to reflect on the experience, to think through the why of what I'm doing, but also my deeper why. So what is my sense of purpose? What are my values? What is my role in the world? And so having students have that time to be able to go over that experience, to think through it, and to reflect on that. So we want students to be thinking about, like, over an experience. I had an interesting time at the homeless shelter today. I was serving soup, and I had this interesting conversation with one of the men there, and this is what it made, like, what came up for me. And that might be part of the reflection one day. And then the next day, it might be a deeper and wider conversation on what's my role in homelessness in the the world's richest nation in the history of the world. We have a lot of homelessness. So we have, close to 700,000 Americans who are homeless each night. That's a problem. And so how do we get students to start thinking proactively also about these larger social issues? So the experience is really kind of, even though it's only a week long of service, the actual trip, it's built over kind of a 6-month experience of building relationships with the group, learning about the issue that each of the trips is going to face, and being able to go on the trip then and actually execute that. And then the goal, hopefully, long term, is that they're dealing with these issues on the trip, but then they're also connecting that with local issues. So the trip we have 5 trips going over spring break. One of them is going to the Arizona border to address issues of immigration. We want them to take those issues and then think through what are the ways that they can connect when they come back. So maybe that's volunteering with a Multicultural Resource Center or Catholic Charities or the International Institute in Erie, and they can actually work with folks in that same way locally too. So taking these global issues and actually acting on them locally is important too. In terms of how students can get involved, so we're already starting to think through next year's trips. We try to think forward, and that's largely because we want to keep these manageably affordable for our students. So the more that we prepare ahead of time, the more that we can control those costs, especially for those that require flights. So, if we're buying flights 2-3 weeks out of the trip, those are going to be hundreds of dollars more per ticket than if we buy them, 4 months in advance. And so we really try to prepare that ahead of time. So our student leader applications, those open in June and July. Then we normally set that placement up in August. And then for the general participant, that application opens in August, and it's normally open through the end of September, largely.
Awesome. ABSTs are a super fun and great way to get some service under your belt and experience different cultures. I am super excited to go on my first ABST this spring, and I am looking forward to learning and growing. So students, if you also want to learn and grow and get some service under your belt and take advantage of one of Gannon's many great opportunities, then I suggest looking for the ABST applications that will open up in the fall, like Keith said.
Sonic Sunrise on 90.5 WERG.
That was Cannons with Desire here on the Sonic Sunrise. And to wrap up our What's the Why segment this morning, it is now time for the ultimate question, the question of the hour. Keith, what is the why behind the work you do at Gannon and in the Erie community?
Thanks, Maddie. So I love working with college students. I've been doing this for about 15 years, so quite a while. But the time in college is a space, it's an environment where there's a lot of new ideas, there's an openness of to newness, to new knowledge, to new experiences, to new people that helps you to grow, to be transformed. And so the time in college, especially those first few years, is, I think, unparalleled in our lives for growth, for exploration, for experimentation, to really reevaluate, who am I? And so we go through the world, up till about 18, you live in a particular family with particular people, with particular ideas that might be informed from your parents, from your extended community, faith communities, and that's all good as a formation. And then college is this time to now say, you're kind of cut loose, not completely from these spaces, but you're in a new environment where you can say, do I actually believe this? Do I actually think this? Or with new information, maybe this shifts how I see the world. And so I think being in that environment for myself is really enriching. I had a really transformative college experience. And particularly the things that shifted my worldview were service experience. So doing a lot of volunteering with after school programs, homeless shelters, working with ESL, English as a Second Language, in communities in the Harrisburg community, really shifted how I saw the world and my sense of purpose, my sense of justice, my sense of the common good, and what my role is within that. And then I also traveled a lot as a student, so having experiences both in the U.S. as well as abroad really kind of helped me see a bigger picture of who we as the human race are. And so that helped expand that. And so that's always been something to be able to be part of those kinds of experiences with students and be able to create those experiences for students is really enriching. There's two quotes that really, I think, are some of my favorite quotes. One is by Frederick Buechner. He's an author, was an author, who says that vocation is the place where our deep gladness meets the world's deep need. And I love that because vocation, seen as kind of our calling, our sense of purpose in life, that sense that we don't have to do service, so we don't have to give back as this sense of duty, or it has to be kind of drudgery, but it actually can be something that connects to a deeper space in ourselves. So helping students figure out where is that sense of gladness? Where are those values that when I do it, it doesn't feel like work, it actually feeds me in a deeper kind of soul level. The other quote that I really like that connects with that is by Howard Thurman, who was a professor at Morehouse College. He was a mentor to Martin Luther King Jr., and he said, "Don't ask what the world needs, ask what makes you come alive and go and do it. Because what the world needs is people who have come alive." And I think that's another way of saying that quote on vocation, where it's tying into that sense of what animates you, what really helps fuel you. And for most people, it's not just money or careers, it's something deeper. It's about human connection. And I think in our world at the Center for Social Concerns and at Gannon, we're trying to not just get students to have degrees and get good jobs. We do want that to happen because you're paying a lot of money for a degree here and you want to make sure that it's going to go to good use. But it's really about human formation. How are we developing you to be able to use that job or that career or your time or your knowledge or your personhood to better the spaces that you inhabit? So how are you able to create betterness out of the world, benefiting the common good, benefiting yourself though too? So it's not just a selfless act, it's a recognition that we're interdependent. And it's not just you and your job, it's you and your job in a community that has real needs and has real strengths. And you're part of that too. And so in terms of the why, I really think it's seeing that interconnectedness, helping students to develop what are their values, and then how do they act upon those values? How do they push themselves to be put in uncomfortable situations where they can grow, where they can learn, where they can experiment, where they can fail safely, and to be able to kind of push themselves so that they can be more of who they are.
Wonderful. And thank you for sharing, Keith, and thank you for joining me this morning, telling us more about the Center for Social Concerns at Gannon, ABSTs, and most importantly, sharing your why.